history is not remembered only through monuments or archives. It is also remembered in prayers. For decades, families would come to places like this chapel to mourn those taken away in the night, deported to Siberia, lost in exile, or simply killed resisting occupation. The Baltics. That's where we start this chapter of the buried stories. In 1939, Hitler and Stalin did not only sign a pact, they agreed on a map of other people's futures. On August 23rd, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, publicly a promise not to attack each other, secretly a plan to divide Eastern Europe. According to the first protocol, Finland, Estonia and Latvia were placed in the Soviet sphere. Lithuania was first left to Germany, while Poland had to be divided between the two great powers.
But then, on September 28, 1939, a new treaty was signed in Moscow. And under that treaty, Lithuania, together with Estonia and Latvia, was assigned to the Soviet Union's sphere of influence. This marked the beginning of all the great misfortunes and tragedies that Lithuania experienced in the 20th century.
After Nazi Germany invaded Poland and Soviet troops entered from the east, Europe watched borders disappear by force. In June 1940, as war consumed the continent, the Soviet Union moved into Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia, and almost immediately Sovietization began. Governments were replaced, elections were staged, and independence was erased on paper before it was crushed in life.
There was a very intensive Sovietization of the Baltic countries. It took place in the economic and demographic spheres and included mass repressions, deportations, and imprisonment in the Gulag. The goal was to change the identity of the Lithuanian people so that Lithuanians would also become a constituent part of the so-called Soviet people.
Then came the machinery of fear. Intellectuals, officers, teachers, priests, writers, farmers, and families were accused as enemies, arrested in the night, sent to prisons, death chambers, or forced labor camps, not because of what they had done, but because of who they were.
During Soviet occupation, there were two mass deportations, one in June 1941, second wave of mass deportation, which was in March 1949.
The first major deportation took place on June 14, 1941. Only 1 week remained before the war with Germany began. In a single night, 17,000 people and their families were deported. During this deportation, the heads of families were separated from the other members of their families.
Men were usually sent to prison camps in Siberia, while women with children were sent to resettlement somewhere in Siberian villages. For most, it was the last time they saw their families.
The Soviet authorities planned these deportations in a very systematic manner. The preparations lasted several months because they had to gather information on who had belonged to political parties during Lithuania's independence, who had expressed anti-Soviet views, and who had helped the partisans.
These particular records are covering the deportation of 1941, and there are some more records covering the second deportation. This record tells us the story, how there were held 4 special meetings before the deportation. There is just some parts that reveal us the story, how the deportation was prepared and what happened right after the deportation.
All of this information was collected by the Soviet security agencies and the militia. Then, on the designated day, mass arrests were carried out, and the people were taken to assembly points. From there, they were transported by train deep into the Soviet Union.
Kazakhstan was the territory where the largest number of people were held. In 1951, there were about 80,000 people from the Baltic countries in special camps there.
The train stations, like the one behind me, once said goodbyes to thousands of people carried from across the Baltic states toward Siberia during the years of the Soviet occupation. For some, it became the last train east. Many died on the way from thirst and hunger before ever reaching exile. For those who survived, the sound of trains would forever carry the memory of loss. The numbers are not only statistics, but they matter. In 1940-41 alone, estimates count around 75,000 victims of Soviet repression in Lithuania, 34,000 in Latvia, and 60,000 in Estonia. In the years that followed, the tragedy grew into hundreds of thousands of arrests, deportations, executions, and Gulag sentences. Behind every number was a name, and behind every name, a family broken by the state.
My grandmother would always say that when they were going to that train and looking back when the train was moving, someone at the train who told them, "Don't look back, because we now will go forward, and this will be your new home, and this is where you will be buried as well."
Magda remembers on the day when she was arrested at her home. Her 7-year-old daughter ran to her and screamed, "Mom, please take me with you." But Magda didn't want to take her daughter to Siberia, and Magda was sent to a prison camp. But a few months later, Magda's daughter and mother were also arrested and sent to Siberia, but to a settlement somewhere else.
My father and my mother had been given a sentence of 25 years. They were deported together in one railway wagon on January 28, 1945. I was born later, on March 6, 1952, in the village of Aban in the Krasnoyarsk region.
Around 40 to 50% of those who were deported were children under the age of 18.
Polish, Lithuanian, Latvian and Estonian losses totaled about 1.7 million.
The Gulag was not only a prison system, it was a whole world built to exhaust the body and silence the soul. People worked in freezing forests, mines and construction sites, with hunger, disease, humiliation and distance from home becoming part of their sentence.
There was severe cold, and the clothing was not suitable for it. The temperature dropped to as low as minus 50 degrees. The main work was in the forest, for both women and men. Instead of surnames, as was often the case in the camps, there were only numbers. This was also a form of dehumanization, in the sense that a person's identity was erased, their surname and first name were taken away. I remember that her number here was SJJ755.
They were forced to do quite hard work. They were forced to dig holes to build houses, and they were forced to build railways, and they were given minimal food, no resources of like any work equipment or anything.
While searching through and comparing both deportations, the historians say those deported in 1941 had even more severe conditions in the labor camps in the villages of Siberia than those who deported later.
My book is based on my conversations with my grandmother. And I was doing that when my kids were very little. One of them had just been born, so I would call her and I would say, you know, let's just do it because she will wake up. I cannot continue. And then she would be like, I've gotten tired. And I would say, how can you be tired? This is me, your granddaughter. You talk to me every day. You know, this is the story that you've been telling me forever. How can you be tired? And then she would say something like, for you, you talk to me, you have written that down and you left off and lived your life. For me, I have to relive it every single time.
But occupation did not mean surrender. From 1944 into the 1950s, thousands of Baltic partisans, remembered today as the Forest Brothers, disappeared into the forests and continued the fight against the Soviet rule, carrying with them the idea that freedom had not died.
Forest Brothers were resistance fighters organized against the Soviet troops. Around 15,000 men and women, mostly men, who were being actively Forest Brothers.
Here we see a monument. Probably it was built by relatives. We see a hole in the ground. This is one of the bunkers. And there was a tragic story about this bunker because there was a betrayal, there was a battle. All of them died like heroes. And exactly in this place we see some marks. There is names of the heroes who died over here in 1949.
My grandmother was a partisan liaison, which meant that she helped them by providing food, clothes, medicines, also delivering messages. They would get caught and then sentenced and sent to Siberia.
My mother was a courier for the partisans. When the post-war resistance against the Soviet authorities began, she didn't hesitate for a moment. She became a liaison between the partisans because she knew the area very well.
This was the headquarters, so we see probably was one enter over there and probably another enter over here. This bunker is very interesting because 1948, the leader of South Lithuania, Adolfas Ramanauskas Vanagas, he got a letter from another leader to declare the resolution, we will fight till the end. This document, we call it the highest constitution document of our country, and that shows our willing for freedom, for democracy.
In 1951, she was arrested. She did not manage to deliver the documents to the partisans. The NKVD found them, and this became the reason for her conviction. She was sentenced to 25 years.
Their struggle was very, very unequal against a state that had defeated such a powerful force as Germany. And this resistance was not simply defeated, it was annihilated.
My grandmother had 3 brothers who were partisans, or Forest Brothers as we would call them. In the graveyard, the body of just one of them.
Dead bodies, bringing them to the village, putting them in the middle of the street to frighten local people. But look, if you will fight against us, if you support them, you will be dead and you will be lying like this. And the tragedy is more than 20,000 partisan fighters have been hidden. And we found from 1988 only 3,000.
Forest Brothers were #1 enemies in the eyes of the Soviet power, and they needed to be eliminated from society. And everyone else who were close with the Forest Brothers, their family members or their friends and so on.
A lot of resistant fighters in the beginning of Soviet occupation actually would end up here, if not killed somewhere in the woods, because usually the resistance fighters did not want to be captured, so they rather choose to be killed or kill themselves, but not go into the prison.
There was a not written law. If you see that during the battle, you will lose this battle, the last bullet of a grenade used for yourself. Why? You know, Lithuanians are Catholics, and to kill yourself, it's not allowed, it's a sin. But if you not kill yourself with the last bullet, and you will be taken by enemy, you will be tortured, and sooner or later, you will tell some secrets, and we will be killed your relatives, other friends, other partisans.
This is kind of a typical interrogation cell, very small. As you probably know already in places like that, all the furniture is connected to the floor, so you cannot use it as a weapon or something. And yeah, the doors are all with this kind of soundproof.
Interrogator came in and said, "We killed the third brother as well." He had a picture with him of 4 bodies of partisans laying down, and this interrogator covered all of these faces with his fingers and started asking her, "Do you know this guy?" And she would always think that even if I do, I don't want to reveal the Russian secret services who they are, because relatives of these people will just get deported to Siberia. So she always maintained this line of not being a traitor, as she would put it. And then he uncovered the other face. "Do you know him?" "No, I don't." "Do you know him?" "No, I don't." And then the 4th one was the face of her youngest brother, who was 16. And then she was like, "I could not hide anything. I just started crying." And she said, "This was the most difficult moment of my life."
This is an interesting detail. This net is basically to prevent people from suicide and also throwing things up and down. It's actually original from the year the prison was built. When they bring prisoners, they used to bring them here straight away to hold them before they do some administration work or make decisions where to move people. Yeah, you see there's like, for one person, it's like a, social network of those times, because these are like messages. They say, like who talked with the guards, who is like a mole, a snitch, whatever, is from which town. So it's kind of all messages.
This is personal file of Jaan Tõnisson, a very renowned politician in Estonia, multiple times of prime minister and well-known statesman. He was detained, and so his fingerprints protocol. There are several questions and answers, as there is no recorded evidence about his death. Historians believe, according one of the small piece of evidence, that he was shot down here in Tallinn, and actually we still don't know anything about his grave.
So this is the outside area where the prisoners would spend some time outside. So, like, it's pretty much the same cell, a bit bigger, but outside. They would either do some art, which you'll see on the walls, or they do some physical exercise. So that's basically what they did.
When Stalin died in 1953, the sentenced people across the Gulag allowed themselves to hope. They believed that perhaps the gates would open, that the lies would be corrected, that justice would finally arrive. But for many, the system remained stronger than mercy.
For example, Lithuanians and Western Ukrainians were forbidden to return to their homeland, even after Stalin's death. Only in 1958, they were officially allowed to return from exile.
People thought that when Stalin died, their lives would become better. However, nothing improved for them, and several other factors led to the uprising in Kengir.
Out of that broken hope came resistance. In Kengur, today's Kazakhstan, thousands of prisoners rose against the camp regime. Women and men stood together against guards, dogs, weapons and tanks, turning a place of captivity into a brief territory of human dignity.
My mother thought that if we women walked toward the tanks, they would not dare drive over people. But the tanks ran over many people. She didn't manage to get into the barracks in time, and her jacket got caught and was dragged by a tank. Fortunately, the jacket had not been sewn very sturdily. When the tank caught it, it simply ripped it off her. If she had been wearing sturdier clothing, we wouldn't be having this conversation today.
Kengur was crushed, but it was not forgotten. The uprising exposed the weakness of the Gulag system and became one of the events that accelerated its crisis, its reforms, and eventually its dismantling.
After the Kengur uprising, the sentences of 70% of those convicted were overturned. NKVD officers said, "We're sorry, we detained you by mistake and kept you here," and acknowledged that she was innocent.
Even here, the local people looked at us as if we were fascists. We have one enormous problem that still has not been resolved to this day. All those communists, all those collaborators, have still not been publicly identified by name. People know who was deported and who carried out the deportations, but those responsible remain unnamed.
I was born in the Gulag. My father still had to remain in Kazakhstan for another 5 years. We lived there until 1967, and in 1967 we finally returned to Lithuania. So, because I was born in the Gulag, I have the status of a political prisoner. And since I lived those 5 years as an exile while my father had been released, I also have the status of an exiled person.
Years of arrests, deportations, and repression had brought the Baltic states to a turning point. Things had to change. Starting from Vilnius, that resistance turned into something the world had never seen before: the Baltic Way. Almost 2 million people joined hands across Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia in the human chain, demanding freedom.
In June 1988, an organization called SAJUDIS was established. It was capable of organizing an event like the Baltic Way, during which people joined hands to form a human chain stretching from Vilnius to Riga and from Riga to Tallinn, about 650 kilometers long.
In 1991, as the Soviet system shattered under the failed coup attempt, the Baltic nations reclaimed what had never truly been surrendered. Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia were the first to break away from the Soviet Union, not as new nations, but as old nations returning to themselves.
In December 1991, Yeltsin and the leaders of Ukraine and Belarus met in the Belovesh forest and signed an agreement stating that the Soviet Union would cease to exist. From that point on, the Soviet Union no longer existed as a state.
In Lithuania in general, there were families who were afraid to speak about what happened to them, even after we've gained independence. First of all, because we didn't know who is who. Some of the people did not necessarily believe that this is actually the end, and that the Russians might take us over again.
She has described that what kept her alive there for 9 years was hope to see her family again, hope to see her home country, Estonia, again, and secondly, anger. Anger towards the Soviet system.
She finished writing her diary in 2004 when Lithuania joined the European Union and became a member of NATO. That was the end of it. She put a full stop. Just before that, she wrote, "We are now free people, and we live in a free Europe."
Today, they still choose to remember KGB prisons, execution sites, deportation stations, and cells of torture have become museums, not to keep pain alive, but to make sure silence never wins again. The wound may never fully heal, but memory has become its witness.
In 2019, it didn't really meet any modern, criteria, because you still need to meet the European requirements and everything. So the decision was made just to close it, change it into something that actually brings good emotion. But at the same time, it's very important that whatever happened here is not forgotten. So in a way, the activities that are happening here, concerts and things that attract young people, also remind us all the things that happen here. So some people say that, how can you have fun and a concert in a prison where people were killed and murdered? But at the same time, is it better to just have it closed and forgotten? Or maybe you bring people here and say, let's have a concert, but also send the message of things that are important.
The brutal regime has left unstable, safe-wise, and always insecure. This is what it did to the entire nation, because what now historians say when they are asked, how did the Second World War traumatize, Lithuanians? It's not possible to do any research because the trauma lasted for 50 more years. We lived in lies, and that leaves you very insecure.
The Soviet Union did not fall in a single day. It fell under the weight of many forces. But among all those forces was the refusal of people to forget who they were. And when the Soviet flag came down for the last time, the Baltics was ready to reclaim what they had never truly surrendered, their freedom.